And Tim Finn is back with us on the program. Tim, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Can I get some life advice from you? How do you look so good at your age?
Well, if I look good on Zoom, Mike, it really says something. I don't know. That's like a random piece of luck, I guess. I don't know. My dad, our dad, looked pretty good to the end. He was a silver fox from an early age, and he just basically held it together. So it's genetic. Maybe if I look all right, I don't know. Yeah.
Do you do anything about it? I mean, do you work and exercise? Do you eat clean? Have you given up drinking? What's happened?
I do swim every day. I swim laps.
There you go.
Yeah, that's been my thing for many years. I did it as a kid in Te Awamutu. We had a great coach there called Jack Hansen, and he had us training summer and winter. In the winter, we used to go to the Mormon pool, which is part of the Mormon complex outside Te Awamutu there. And so, yeah, I was very fit as a kid. And so I've sort of picked it up again when I was about 30 after doing no exercise from 18 till probably 32, yeah.
Performance is fitness, though, isn't it? Don't you find on stage? I think a lot of those, I mean, if you look at the Rolling Stones, for goodness sake, they should all be dead, but I think performance has kept them alive.
Yeah, well, and Jagger's phenomenally fit. I mean, the way he moves around on stage, and I think he's 80 now. So, they're riding out ahead of us, these guys, saying, hey, come on, it's not too bad out here. It's, kind of inspiring.
Exactly. Talk to me about where you are in life. This whole show we want to talk about this morning and you getting back on stage. What brought that about?
Well, I did a gig in Manly last year over there in Sydney, Mike, and I've been doing one-off gigs for years now at festivals and that, like one or two a year, but thinking that I was kind of semi-retired from touring. But they lured me out of my cave, the band, because they'd played all these old Ends tracks. We started in 1977 with My Mistake. We went through Icy Red and chronologically through all the songs, and they played them all so well. These guys are about 20 years younger than me, and they'd learned all the parts, Eddie Rayner's keyboard parts, and it just sounded so good. And I felt very fresh about it all and just thought, got to do this again. So let's do a tour,
Were you trepidatious?
No, I wasn't trepidatious. I was kind of excited. I sort of drove around in the car. I've got a car that's about 3 years old now, and so it's still got a CD player. And you know how they don't do that anymore? It sucks,
Yes.
right? And so I listened to the old CDs and started picking out songs. Like the other day, I decided I was going to do Nobody Takes Me Seriously because it was never released as a single, but it's a song of true colors. It's a really good song. And so I've been doing a lot of music theater shows and that lately, writing for character. And that song is a real character piece about a guy in a factory. He's not being taken seriously by the boss. And I was able to jump back inside his skin. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Fantastic. So this band, talk to me about the band and what you require in a band to back you up.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty standard lineup, but I've added in saxophone this time because in the early days in Split Ends, we had a saxophonist / trumpet player called Robert Gillies. And so that sound is a beautiful sound to work with in some of those older songs. Bass, drums, guitar, keys. I've got our daughter, Elliot, who's going to be singing BVs with me for the first time ever on this tour. And that's very exciting. And so, yeah, they just basically have to learn the songs before I get there so that I just breeze in and kind of it's all happening. I don't want to go through all the painstaking nuts and bolts of learning old songs. I just want them to learn them, and they do. They're wonderful about it.
Do you worry about whether they hold you in such reverence? The performance side of the case. You're Tim Finn, and they don't want to mess it up.
Well, yeah, there possibly might be some of that. These guys I've played with a few times now in festival situations, which are pretty harrowing. You don't get a sound check. You're just thrown on stage in front of 30,000 people. And if you can survive that and come through, then I think, they've kind of come through that test, that initiation. So now that it's our tour, it'll be a lot more on control, and I think they'll be cool. I mean, I don't feel that, but, it's possible that they were a little bit that way to start. But I soon disarm them, me, I'm Mr. Nice guy.
You mentioned Elliot. Explain to me, if you nature nurture, if you are immersed in music your whole life with your parents, will you be a good musician?
Yeah, it's a good question. They say that music and athletic prowess are passed on directly. If you're a fast runner, your kid's probably going to be able to run fast. If you're a musician and they grow up around it, they're just going to think it's totally normal. I mean, both of them can play drums and bass and guitar and keys. And, I couldn't do that at their age. I've always been a bit of a secret drummer, but I didn't play drums. I only used to look at them in Te Awamutu in the music shop, just staring at this drum kit You know, it was almost a love affair, but I didn't actually play drums until I was well into my 20s. So, you know, they got an early start. And I think, yeah, definitely it gives them a flying start, and they just think it's natural. It's a language, you know.
I've talked to Harper about it over the years, and how you separate out, like he wants to be himself and do his own thing, and you're, you know, yes, you're dad, but you're not dad. And have you had that issue with him? Have you talked that stuff through, or not really? He's just gone and done his own thing.
He has gone and done his own thing. He does it with a certain amount of you know, panache, and I take my hat off to him, because it is a big one where you're sort of, your parent is well known, and you're sort of following the family tradition, almost like Neil's sons, both musicians. But I think they've all handled it really well. I mean, you know, these days, I mean, a lineage is actually quite important these days. It's taken more seriously. You know, people talk about nepotism and that, but I think in music it's seen as, you know, there's many examples like the Carter family, and there's many examples in music where it's a strong bonding thing with, you know, music, and it's seen as legitimate and authentic by the audience, you know.
He's a very fine young man, Harper, isn't he? I mean, you've got to be proud of him.
Very proud. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, he is. He's doing well. And he's over there now in Woodstock making an album. So pretty exciting time. Yeah.
Fantastic. What do you have, you know, when you look at your position in life and where you are at the moment, do you have eras, favorite eras, you know, the ends, Crowded House, whatever it is? Do you think it like that or not?
No, I don't think of favorites. I mean, they're all kind of, you know, I was very fortunate. Split Ends was a struggle for 8 years, but it didn't feel like a struggle. It was a great camaraderie, and we had, you know, some of the humor, the best humor comes out of difficulties, but it did take us 8 years of really like working our asses off, you know, to try and reach an audience, so we could sustain the band and, you know, have roadies and good light shows and stay in semi-decent hotels. You know, all of that takes quite a lot of work. You know?
Yeah.
We got there.
Was it easier then or harder now? I like all the musicians I interview now, they've all done something in their bedroom via the net. And you think, you know, you can get out to the world so much more easily. When you were doing the ends, there was none of that.
Yeah, there's none of that. Yeah. I don't know. I think it was, you know, there's a glut now. Like it's seen as being just a pretty reasonable choice when you leave school, is to become a musician, whereas it was pretty far-fetched back in the day. And so there was less kind of competition in some ways, but it was a grind to reach the world. I mean, you had to travel. You literally had to get on a plane. These days, I mean, yeah, sure, you can put it up on the net, but nobody might notice, you know. So it's I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's always hard. It's a long way to the top. It
is a long way to the top, and once you get, there's only one way down. What do you do these days that invigorates you? I mean, apart from this, obviously.
Well, I write songs. I mean, I'm usually working on something. I'm involved in a lot of theatre projects, writing musicals. Getting inside the heads of characters and that. I can do all of that from home, and I love it. So there's usually something on the go. Plus, I've done a few new albums, one with Eddie Rayner and, you know, a couple of other things. It is very easy now to send files across the world to old friends who you may not have spoken to for years, and then suddenly you're writing a song with them, like Phil Manzanera in England, who's the Roxy Music's guitarist, and, you know, he produced an album for Split Ends in 1976. Just last year, we put out a new record. So you can do all that now, and it's great compensation as you age, you know, is to be able to reach out to old friends.
Do you find yourself more creative when it doesn't matter, or were you always that creative? In other words, you know, you just expressed yourself and hoped for the best?
Well, I mean, I think it flows more freely now, and I don't know why, but perhaps, you know, this thing of writing for character has freed me up in some ways. When you're writing your own songs and you're in a band, there's a lot of pressure, you know, on a band and sort of if you're the lead songwriter, which I was for a number of years until Neil joined, you know, that's quite a lot of pressure, but there's no pressure at all now. You know, I'm not trying to prove anything. So maybe that when you release the pressure valve, you know, the songs flow out more.
Exactly. Well, when this tour goes really well, which it will, and then the pressure goes on to do more, what are you going to do about that?
Well, as I say, Mick Jagger at 80, I mean, the thing is, you know, maybe there's 10 more good years in me, Mike, you know, I don't know.
And why not? Because surely that's the thing. I think about it a lot. And Tony Bennett we lost just the other day. But right. Surely there is something in doing what you love every day. And if you do what you love every day, that in some way, shape or form keeps you younger.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And I would wish that for everybody, that they would find, you know, it may not even be their job. Maybe their job sucks, but they've retired or something, but they've got a passion. It could be gardening. It could be reading good books. It could, you know, a whole combination of things. Let's face it, those little magic moments where you go into those moments that are truly personal and beautiful and inspiring, and we've all got them. So you just have to nourish those, and I think you're fine.
It's an excellent piece of advice. Lovely to catch up with you. Go well on the tour, and
Thanks, Mike.
we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much.